Hello everyone, my name is Gus.
Hi, I'm Woody.
And today we will be covering a topic that comes up to us a lot. You know, as cave divers, we get to post videos about cave diving and feature other divers as well. And one of the questions that we get often is, you know, what kind of gear, what kind of equipment do you use? I want to buy the same one so I can dive like you guys. You know, what kind of gear does Ed or Patrick or Mike or Brian or all these people that we feature in our channel, you know, what is it? How can they do that?
As if the gear kind of automatically makes you able to do that?
Correct. And I don't think we've ever addressed this, but this is a question that comes up often to other YouTubers as well, other divers as well. And Akeem from Inner Space Explorers had this question, and he actually addressed it. So I watched this video, and I thought I want to show it to Woody so we can talk about it.
I look forward to it.
Hi, Achim here from Inner Space Explorers. Today we'll talk about excuses, and before we start with these excuses, if you like my content, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel.
I like his office.
Don't forget the little notification bell so you get information when I upload new content.
Great content, by the way. Awesome.
So, yesterday evening I decided I need to check out if I'm fit again for diving, because I had this COVID thing, and for the last 3-4 weeks it just felt terrible and my sinus was blocked and I couldn't really dive. So I decided I'd go for a quick one yesterday evening. Took my oxygen rebreather, went for the lake, and nothing special, just a spot where parking is easy and there's a little bit of toilet facilities, etc. So no spectacular dive. I just wanted to know if I'm able to get back in the water and everything works. So when I was walking down to the water, there was this guy coming up to me and said like, "Hey, you're the YouTube guy." I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm Achim, but I have a YouTube channel." And he said like, "Yeah, I love your content and I want to dive like you do," for whatever reason. And so I was like, okay, there goes my nice evening dive. And so the guy said like, "Yeah, you know, can I dive with you and you can have a look and this and that." I was like, "Yeah, whatsoever, just, yeah." Then we dive together. So we went in the water and he was swimming like a seahorse, like this. And so I waved him back to the surface. It's like a 3, 4, 5 meter dive. I was on the oxygen rebreather anyway. And I was like, "Hey, you need to fix your trim. I mean, you're in the water like a wet towel." And he was like, "Yeah."
I'm pausing it, and I'm not going to interrupt too long, but a lot of people ask me, why does it really matter? Why not just swim along like that? Yeah. Why not be in good trim in the open ocean?
Why can't you be vertical?
Forget about cave diving. We all know that in cave diving, it's absolutely critical. You can't silt out. But what about all your other kind of diving? I just posed that as a question. Let's play it a little bit longer. But who cares, Gus?
That's the question we get.
I'm in the ocean. I'm fine. Don't you want to dive like I don't care.
It's not a big deal.
Or do I?
Yeah, I know this perfectly all right, but my fins are too light, so they pull up my feet, and I have to compensate. Therefore, I have to compensate for that, and that's why I'm swimming like that. I was like, okay, here we go. So I said, like, look, we just switch fins. So
it's the fins.
The same shoe size as I am, from what I see. So it's also X large. You get my heavy fins, and then the issue's solved. And if you then can do perfect horizontal trim, you can keep my fins. And I was like, oh, yeah. So we changed fins, we went back in the water, and the seahorse was swimming next to me. So.
And by the way, it's not the diver's faults that they're swimming like this. I just want to say that why, instructors, are you teaching your students that it's okay in the open water to continually dive like this? Why not, without being insulting, explain to them, show them, discuss with them, and get them where it's more natural to be in trim than not? And again, I'm holding off on what all the benefits of that are, because I want you to keep watching.
Got him back to the surface, and I was like, "So what is it now?" And he was like, "Yeah, those are too heavy." And I was like, "Okay, then you probably should call Scuba right now and ask if they can make some magic fins for you that have the exact right weight for you, so you can show me that perfect trim." And he was a little bit like, And yeah, but everything else is perfect. It's just this thing. And I was like, okay, then there's but 20 meters from here, there's a platform and 5 meters of water. Let's go there, and you show me a circle of basics. Sorry. And I was like, oh, yeah, we can do this. So we went over there, and so Circle of Basics, I'll put a link in the description on one of the early videos where you can actually see this exercise. It's the standard exercise for ISE to check out if your skills are on the spot. So you're horizontal, you're not moving forward, backward, you're not turning, and you're running through a circle of exercises.
And again, so what? Why do I need to be able to do that? By the way, I absolutely believe it's critically important more than ever now after being a week with Patrick Ridman.
We're asking.
So
yeah.
Believe me, it matters, and I can't wait to discuss why. And in fact, it even helps tremendously. You know how he talked about the fins? Take them off. Let me see you do these skills with no fins.
That way they're not too light, too heavy.
No, yes, Gus, that will matter, but you will not believe how much it will actually help you if you can do all this with no fins. Anyway, let's keep going.
And so first you switch your regulators, and the second thing is you take off your mask. So when he took off his mask, I could see him struggle, and then he put the mask back on, or he tried to put the mask back on, and went off to the surface. So I went to the surface as well. I was like, okay, what is it? And it was like, yeah, you know, the mask strap's too tight, and the hood is too close to his face. So when he puts it back on, that doesn't work. And to cut the long story short, I basically, yeah, but that ended relatively short after that because I lost my temper a little bit.
Now that is also a flaw, which I respect him, but I will tell him that I do see a lot of these instructors that are kind of advanced instructors, we'll call them tech instructors, that for some reason they forget where they started. Does that make sense? I guarantee you they had the same problems, and somebody took the time to be patient and show me what I don't know. Why do I need to do this is number one, because they won't learn unless they know why, and make it non-stressful and fun. Guarantee the performance will be better. So I hear him, and I understand it can be frustrating as an instructor, but you just blew it. The moment you lost your temper, frankly,
well, let me ask you this.
I lose a lot of respect at that point, unless the student is like, I don't need to know. I know more than you. I'm better than you.
So that was going to be my next question. So my question is, I understand about patience. I understand about not immediately losing it if you don't get it the first try.
Of course.
I get it. Nobody's going to do that. But the question is, how much of the student's attitude matters when it comes to patience? A lot. Because to me, I feel like as long as you understand that you are not going to get it right the first time, that it's going to require time, that you're learning and you're open to feedback, you know, I'll have unlimited patience. I won't run out of patience. But if we come up and I tell you, for example, you say, well, you're not cleaning your mask because you're blowing through your mouth and not through your nose, and you tell me, no, I wasn't, the patience bucket is going to start running low immediately.
I don't have that issue. I don't. And the reason I don't is because it takes them a minute to feel like they're having enjoyment. Otherwise, they're going to be defensive. It takes them a minute also to realize you're not telling them this for your ego, to show I'm way better than you, student. I know more. Look how good I am. And that's a very difficult balance as an instructor. And I teach this in my instructor training class. Make sure that they understand I'm on your side. And it took me a while. Even if it didn't, I always put myself in their shoes. I'm like, man, I really struggle with that. I'm not going to lie. I'll post a lot of times on Facebook, man, this didn't come easy. This didn't come natural, because I want them to feel like I'm welcoming them and understanding that this does take practice and it's important. And I'm excited to tell you this stuff because you're going to love the feeling and how much it improves you. Not because I could care less about, I'm too old, who cares? Am I better or not better? That's not what diving's about. So I kind of don't agree so far with that any moment of an instructor losing their patience. You got to stop that. You got to cut that out. You just got to do better.
And the reason I'm telling you this story is because recently I have more and more and more people approaching me with things like that. They can't do something and they always have an excuse, and the excuse is always equipment related. It's always something else. If it's not the equipment, it's the surroundings. It's too cold, it's too warm, it's too wet. The fins are too heavy, the fins are too light, the suit's too thick, there's something. It's always something. It's never them. And this is actually what drives me mad. And it seems to be the new way of looking into things. And that's why I called this video No Pain, No Gain. If you want to do something, you have to practice, and sometimes practicing hurts. If you want to become a box champion, you probably suffer through some pain practicing. If you want to be the best runner and you practice a lot, you will probably have to endure muscle cramps and whatever, and there will be some sort of pain. If you practice for a marathon run, you will get through some serious pain. And this is basically in all sports. And if you want to become a good diver and you want to really get some good trim and buoyancy skills, especially the trim thing, you will get some pain. I always tell my students, like, if you do that right, you will feel muscles that you didn't know you have. So you will get some sore muscles. You will feel this somewhere in the hip area and in your legs, because it's body tension. And I'll put a couple of videos here and here and here and here where you can actually see me in various configurations with light plastic fins, with heavy rubber fins, combined with a neoprene dry suit, with a tri-laminate dry suit, with a wetsuit, with whatever. And it's always the same. It's not about these fins. So stop bullshitting yourself with like, oh yeah, it's the equipment. It's not the equipment. It's you being lazy and not willing to suffer through a little bit of pain to gain what you want to achieve.
I'm struggling. You know me. let me say something. Yeah, listen, we know as the instructor that they're going to have to go and practice this stuff. But the thing about it is, instructors, you don't have to stress them and make them think it's painful. Make it fun. And I'll tell you the other thing that I now know for sure. Instructor, you have got to deal with their weighting in the proper way. You have got to make sure they are neutral. I mean, I just saw that video of him. If he is in a dry suit, frankly, he should not have to use his low pressure inflator hose BCD at all if he's weighted neutrally and proper. And you know what? It doesn't become that much pain. It actually happens very easily, but we're not weighting people properly. Guaranteed. Most people are overweighted. And you know how I know they're overweighted? They're adding a ton of gas in their BCD. But and you don't need to. You don't need to.
I think what he's talking about and what I sympathize with, maybe because I went through cave diving training in 2020, which is very recently, and I still remember, is how many times I wanted to quit doing the front kick, because he hurts a lot when you're doing front kick, when you're trying to get somewhere and you feel, especially on the flow of the caves in Florida, you're in that flow and you just can't get anywhere. You have to kick hard. Your kick is not as efficient as it is later on in life. And so many times in my brain, it's like, what are you doing? Just flutter kick. You can flutter kick like a normal diver and get through this flow. But you have to go through that pain that he's talking about in order to improve. Now, I rarely flutter kick. If I'm in the ocean, if I'm diving at the aquarium, if I'm diving in a cave, I'm always front kicking because I force myself to do it. And now I have a decent, not even good or perfect at all, front kick that I can move through water. Even in flow, I can move through. Even Woody sometimes has called me, he's like, why are you going so fast? It's because I push myself through it and it hurt. I would come out of dives with cramps. How many times have we been on dives where I've been like, I'm cramping? Mm-hmm. Like dozens of times. It's painful, but in order to get better, you have to go through pain. That's what he's talking about.
Yeah, I understand. I just don't like to set up the theme that it's going up front, that it's going to be painful and it's going to be, like a agonizing. I just want to remind everybody that the number one reason we dive is for fun. And you cannot learn if you're not having fun. Google it. Google it. It's scientifically proven. If you are not having fun, your brain is no longer accepting this as something that I want to do naturally at ease. Got to be fun.
The Marine Corps is going to disagree with that, but
listen, honestly, I don't really care. And I'm really going to be cocky on this one. When my students are having fun, it's so much easier for them to gain the skills. And forget just regular frog kicking. They can back frog kick.
Yep.
It doesn't take that much if you're weighted properly and you're relaxed. If you're stressed, forget it. You can sit there all day with your student. You can yell at them. You can get stressed at them. And it's all they're going to do is worse and worse and worse. So I understand, Gus. I know what you're saying. And yes, the body's going to hurt a little. You're developing new muscles. You're developing new movements. And you do have to have some self-motivation. And you got to be willing to do what you're saying. I want to do this. I welcome you. Teach me. I know that I need to improve. But why? Why in the world do I need to do this? So we'll get to that.
And everybody thinks like, yeah, if I buy this magic piece of equipment, this will fix all my issues. It doesn't. The only person that can fix your issues is yourself. And it's by practicing, and going through this pain. I always tell my people, like, the pain is your friend. Love it. It will go away. Your body will learn that, okay, he wants to use this muscle.
That's good.
I better
like
get used
that.
to it. Stop this, like, oh, it hurts, I cannot do this, I need to find a way around. No, there's no way around. Just slug through it. That's the only way of achieving these goals. Listen to what your instructor tells you, and then my good old friend Aaron used to say, eat a spoon of concrete and harden the up. And this actually brings it to the point. You have to be the person that wants to become better. It's something you need to achieve, and there's nothing in the world that will fix it if you are not willing to fix it, and if you're not willing to suffer through a little bit of discomfort to achieve this. That's basically everything I wanted to get out of the system today, because yesterday this guy drove me crazy, and when I also read all these messages and everybody finds the excuse, there is no excuse. There is no excuse for not getting this done, even in the shittiest equipment on the market. So I hope you like this, and I hope you going out there and suffer through a little bit of pain with a smile in your face, and you get better. And if you have questions, comments, put them in the comment section. If you want to discuss pain a little bit more in depth, then check out the Patreon site. That's where we do exactly this. Not only pain, but we have a really nice community there. And other than that, have fun training, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.
Have fun training. My favorite line of everything you said. And it isn't true. It is not true that the worst equipment won't affect you. The equipment will affect you. That is not true. You can have gear that is way too big on you and it's not properly conducive for the kind of diving that you're trying to achieve. The reason, before we go any further, the reason why we keep trying to get students, most people want to go out diving, they want to go in the ocean, and they want to look at pretty fish. And frankly, they probably don't want to go deeper than 60 feet. We won't have a scuba diving industry without those people. What we're doing is like a tiny little fraction of all divers. But why do we even want those people that are going underwater, looking at pretty fish to have good trim? Why? Well, number one, you are going to be so much more relaxed and efficient in the water column if you can get truly neutral and in trim. It actually becomes weightless and relaxed, and your breathing slows down. Trust me, you will not believe it. Frog kicking is very relaxing. You kick and glide. You don't need to fight. You don't need to use your hands. It's a waste of time. So that's the second reason. Frog kicking is actually relaxing. Third, it protects the environment. That's why, because when you're down there looking at this stuff, if you aren't in good trim, it does affect the environment. We have seen dramatic negative effects to various reef systems that are frequented heavy by recreational divers. Fourth, it's way safer. I need to be able to see you, and you need to be able to see me. And when we are in trim, you know what? We are an asset to each other rather than a liability. When I'm diving with Gus, he's not a liability to me. He's an asset. I got enough liabilities dealing with myself and with all the stuff that we do in cave diving. So I want to know when I turn without silting up anything, Gus is right there. He's looking at me. He's in trim. And if you're not in trim, if you're looking down or you're looking up or you're fighting your buoyancy, then you are not able to concentrate on anything else.
Right.
So it is a safety issue because you can't concentrate on the beauty, on the reefs. And finally, my sixth reason why. The marine life will be way more willing to embrace you and get a little bit closer to you if you're chilled. And you can't be chilled if you're not neutral and in trim. You can't. And that's why you dive in the ocean, to see that marine life. So when I know I joke around speaking with fish, they do have a body language. And a lot of it is movements. If you relax with them and they sense your breathing is chilled, which it will be more in buoyancy and trim, get ready for a way, way better experience with that marine life. So that's, now that you know my 6 reasons why, it's worth now going out and practicing.
Yep. And it is true that, I mean, in an emergency situation, for example, where you're, I don't know, a few meters away from your partner, let's say 10 or 15 feet away, and let's say their, first stage explodes and they need air immediately. Their backup regulator, or their octopus doesn't work for them. If you two are vertical, by the time you get together to help each other, you're out of air. Like you're drowning.
It's way more work.
Right.
And
being on trim, that's why fish, barracuda, you look at all these fish out there,
yes,
they're not swimming like this.
Dive like the barracuda. I tell my students that all the time. Funny you said that. Just
I say pick any fish except a seahorse.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just love what you said. I mean, anything that you can do, any skill that you can do out of trim, you can do just as easy and easier in trim, including the mask clearing. For some reason, when people take that mask off, they want to go vertical. I did. But all you got to do is stay in trim and look up. You don't even have to touch or do anything. Just go out of your nose. It'll come right out. So very good points. I understand as an experienced advanced instructor that it is frustrating, but frankly, we need to be teaching the instructors because there are so many instructors, Gus, that I see still. The moment in the pool, they're on their, why are they on their knees?
Or standing.
But what is the purpose of a swimming pool? I get, I don't think you should be on your knees anywhere, even in the open water, but in a pool for safety and control, have them swim around neutral in the 3-foot shallow end. You can't not have control. They just stand up. So instructors, you need to be neutral and buoyant, and you need to let your students learn that as skill number one. Skill number one, first half an hour of your class, leave them alone.
Yeah.
Leave them alone. Let them get neutral.
You brought this up earlier in the video where you mentioned why aren't instructors doing this? I think the answer is because they themselves can do it. And again, I feel like this goes beyond the conversation that you and I can even have. So that's why I asked Achim to join us, and we're going to be talking to him in a second.
Awesome.
Bring him in, talk to him, ask him questions about this and other topics. But I just believe that instructors are trained by other. It's like a vicious cycle. They just keep going on. Instructors with no buoyancy teaching divers that become instructors with no buoyancy, and it just keeps going on and on. It's a snowball effect. And unfortunately, the ratios dictate that for every instructor, 10 new potentially divers with horrible trim will spawn up. And from there, multiple instructors that will teach even more, and so on and so forth. So it is challenging. But like he said, there is no shortcut to it. Nobody just gets in the water and immediately has perfect trim and buoyancy. That's not a thing.
Well,
not immediately. You have to practice.
Listen. When I take brand new open water divers and I leave them alone for 30 or 45 minutes, I've shown other instructors this. By the time that 30 or 45 minutes of swimming around, where I just say, look, your breathing is everything. Don't touch the bottom. Don't go to the top. And I watch them and I get them weighted. They are neutral and in trim in 30 to 45 minutes. They're flutter kicking. The rest of the class, they never know what it feels like not to be. They don't know from the beginning. The biggest example of that is the try scuba people. Some of you shops have try scuba, but what kind of lessons do you give them? Get in your gear, swim around. Look at them after 30 minutes. They're all swimming around neutral and in trim. So if you force people to go unnatural, and actually Steve Pryor calls it natural trim and buoyancy. It's actually more natural to be in trim and buoyant, neutrally buoyant than not. It's more natural, but we make it unnatural by changing that. Let them have natural buoyancy, meaning it's just being affected by their breathing right away, immediately. And I'm telling you, I've done this for years. I've shown other instructors, and it makes a difference. So bring them on. But I mean,
and I wonder how much of it is fear too, because a few months ago, I got to dive with a dive professional, and I noticed that, they had ankle weights, and I'm like, why do you have ankle weights? And he said, well, because my feet tend to go up. So what? That's a good thing. Your feet should be up. It's like, well, no, but it's just too much. And it's like, I feel sometimes that I'm going to go head first. And I'm like, but correct. Arch your back and keep your feet up. That's a good thing. That's a good position. So yeah, I don't know. So we did one dive, ankles down, they were like diagonal. And I'm like, take him off. Just take him off for this one dive. You have air. Nothing's going to happen. Even if you go completely head first, you're going to be okay. You're diving wet. And they took him off and they did the second dive. Way better trim. And I'm like, so see, what's the fear? Oh, my feet are going to be up. Good. That's a good thing.
Awesome.
So let's bring him up and talk to him about this. All right. Welcome, Achim, to the show.
Hey, Achim.
Hi. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Absolutely. We love your channel. We love, all the content that you put out there on Inner Space Explorers. Really, really great stuff for years now. And this last video that we reacted to, No Pain, No Gain, kind of struck a nerve with us because we do get the same questions as well. It's like, what fins you guys dive with? What, how do you do your weighting? Or what's the best weight? And there's all these questions about, I must be doing something wrong in terms of gear, whereas I think we all agree that it's more about technique and putting in the work in order to get better at it.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, definitely.
Well, Akeem, I watched it, as well, obviously, and I had a lot of commentary in it. I agreed with you at times, and I wouldn't say disagreed with you, but brought up other points that I absolutely feel I have to discuss with you. Okay? So,
Okay.
like you, it sounds like I've been teaching for a very long time. I'm an instructor trainer. Let me start the conversation like this. My favorite moment when I first see people enter confined water is actually the try scuba, if you will, customers. Forget a class.
Yeah.
Get rid of a class. Get rid of any instruction. Put people in gear that fits them, because it absolutely matters, the gear. And weight them properly, which most people are not doing. They're not weighted neutral. They don't know how to weight. They don't know how to weight people neutral. They just think they dump all the air out of their BCD and don't move and do the old breath hold and float at eye level. They think that is weighted properly. It's not. And once you get them weighted properly, they've never dove before. I do something that I'm curious to hear your thoughts on. Nothing. The problem with the instructors are, let people be natural in the water. And I want to show, I would love to show you that in 45 minutes, my try scuba students are in trim and swimming around neutral, because it is actually more natural rather than less natural. We screw it up and make them unnatural. We do that as instructors because they got them on their knees. I don't know why, ever, even for 1 second in the water, should you ever, ever, ever have a student on their knees. You have perfect control when you're in trim. So I do hear you that it's no pain, no gain. It's no pain, no gain to remove the habits that we taught them as instructors. Now we have to reverse and bring them back to a natural state. And then the second thing I want to hear your thoughts on that, along with one other thing I would like you to comment on. I think at any moment, no matter what, if an instructor loses their patience with a student, the instructor is, I'm not going to use the word 100% at fault because there's nothing in the world 100%, but I'm going to say if you ever, for whatever reasons, are frustrated with your student and express that, you've destroyed their ability to learn. We can't learn unless we're having fun and not under stress. That's not Woody, that's science. And you should not be teaching. I want to hear your comments on that as well. Everything else you said in the video, I gave the 6 reasons that Woody has why you should always be neutral and in trim. 6 reasons. They have to know why. So go ahead. I look forward to you responding because honestly, I totally love your message. I just want to be sure you address these things because I addressed them in your video. Welcome to Dive Talk.
All right.
Welcome to Dive Talk, man. We let it all out here.
All right. So on the first part, I agree 100%. We are completely on the same page here. And it's funny because it's very similar what I do when I have an absolute beginner in the water, which unfortunately is not too often anymore. But I think there's a huge difference when we think about absolute beginner, as you said, never dove before, never been in the water before, or you talk to somebody that wants to move further, who did his advanced training, whatever, and wants to go, for example, in a BUE or whatever with Inner Space Explorers. That's 2 completely different things because, as you said, I mean, on this advanced level, you sometimes really have to break down bad habits, etc. It's a total different way of teaching. On the very beginner, I do a very similar thing, and actually I get criticized for that a lot, and people are like, how can you do this? Same thing as you said, you put them in confined water, which in Germany most of the time is a pool because some lake is bad visibility. It's not Florida. So you put them in comfortable gear that fits them, you weight them properly, etc. I do 2 things. I learn them how to clear a mask. I learn them how to remove a regulator and get it back in. So that creates comfort because it's a new thing for them. And then actually we normally start to play around with them, which basically, I think even there's a video on my channel where I explain that a little bit. So for example, and that's something I really like to do because it shows that this, for example, the mask is a great example. The dive industry tells the student, this is going to be a problem. Be careful. This is something you may struggle. And then people struggle. So what I normally do is I put them in the pool. I tell them to take the mask off because they learned it a minute ago. Keep breathing. At some point, remove the regulator, hold it in your hand, and swim once across the pool. Take the mask, clear it, and put the regulator back in. When you tell that to somebody that's like advanced trained, rescue trained, they're like, oh my God, you can't do this. But funny enough, 95% of all the people do it without any problems because they do not have this misinformation like, oh, this might create an issue. And after that, actually, everything seems to be very easy and playful. And so we are completely on the same page here.
Awesome.
With the lack of patience on the student, it really depends on the students. I personally think that not everybody has to dive, and there is people that I think shouldn't dive. And I had people that realized after a class, okay, I probably better stop this because I endanger myself, or this is simply not for me. I had some wrong motivation to go into that because I wanted to prove something to myself, or I thought I have to prove something to my partner, for example. That's something I've seen a lot, like the wife that has to dive because the husband wants a dive partner, or the kid that has to dive because the parents want a dive partner, something like that. And sometimes these people are relieved when you tell them, hey, you're out, this is not for you. And then obviously you have these super stubborn people that think they know everything better. And that might be me, but there is a point where you're like, hey, I mean, I donate my time and my knowledge and I try to teach you to the best of my abilities. If you do not want to listen, if you think you know better, then go ahead and do whatever you think is best for you, but just don't waste my time. I'd rather spend it with somebody who wants to learn.
Yeah.
Totally.
And we kind of both predicted that that would be, what you would say, because that's logical, right? That there are some people that are very resistant. I know better. I have all the excuses. But I've only had, I think, once or twice in I don't even know how many students, hundreds, many hundreds, 500, 600 students, people that I would say they shouldn't be diving. You just should not be diving, because if it becomes a very enjoyable experience to them, they end up wanting to dive. And at the beginning, they may be resistant. The second thing I have to address with you is that let's take the I know better than you. I don't need to listen to you. Yeah, I hear you, but no, that's not how it works for me. And I know more than you. Let me tell you something. It's a very tricky approach. But what I try to do is I say, look, I try to make them realize that I'm where they are. Like, I understand what you're saying, and those are valid points. I tried this and it worked for me. Give it a try, and let's see how that goes. And at some point, slowly, it's not going to be that easy, like I just said. If you don't lose it the whole time, they will come around by just watching you and just ultimately learning the whys. Like, let me just start off by gently telling you, and I will tell them gently, I don't want this to come across wrong. I tell them, I had to be convinced as well, even if I didn't have to be convinced. I like to make them think that. And I give them the whys, okay? And it slowly creates this attitude change. So I just want to be careful that I don't want instructors to be willing to dismiss people too quickly, because all of us have pride and ego. Some of us are super experienced and still diving. You would look at them and it would be pretty disappointing, but, the right approach can turn that around. And also, get them in the pool with no fins on. I don't understand why people are in the pool.
Always a nice one.
Don't put your fins on. Then we can determine if you're neutral and in trim. You don't need fins. When you are neutral and in trim, every single part of diving, it's not hard what we do. We have got to get rid of our egos as instructors. The reason I'm in love with scuba diving is because I cannot do hard things. I'm not good. I'm not a sportsman. Scuba diving is not a sport. It's to go underwater and chill and relax. Nobody's trying to, we're not good. I'm not good. You're not good. You learn to finally get chilled and relaxed so you could do nothing underwater. So I know this is to ask you questions, but I also want to convey a message that it's been that conveyed to me even recently more from some very advanced instructors with this theme, and I went into it resistant. And slowly, the whys overcame the resistance. So,
and what you said as well was interesting, which was not everyone has to be a diver. I think that's also applicable to levels of diving. Like, you can be a recreational diver, but doesn't mean you have to be a rebreather diver or a cave diver or a trimix, wreck diver or whatever. It's like,
you don't have to have arms.
I wanted to add that, but couldn't.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like in some cases, I don't know if this is a recreational diving industry fault, that everyone expects that when you take a specialty out there, you're going to pass. Like, I never took a recreational specialty where I was like, I wonder if I'm going to pass this navigation course. Of course I'm going to pass. It's like, it's a given. But when you start getting into these higher levels, like levels, you guys dive in, it's not a given. Not everyone can be at this level, right, as well.
Yeah. I totally agree. It's a total different game. The famous Billy Deans once said, swimming around in 30 feet of water and watching funny fish is one thing. Technical diving, you have to live, eat, and breathe. And that, I think, sums it up in a very nice way. I mean, there is people that can be awesome recreational divers and enjoy themselves, but they have no place in technical diving. Yeah.
They have no
And
place.
Woody, obviously you are way more polite than I am. But I get your message. I know exactly what you mean. And obviously in that video, it probably comes across pretty harsh. So also, I mean, I'm doing this now since 89. So also quite a couple of years and lots of students. And the number of people where I really said, hey, you're out, this is not for you, is probably a handful.
Okay. Okay.
So obviously you always try to convince people and be patient. And a lot of time it's not talking, it's actually in the water. That's my recipe is if somebody tells me, look, this is different and this and that, okay, let's go for a dive. Just let's have a look. And then, I mean, when they realize that they cannot do what they said they can do before, then actually normally they start to think a little bit. And even if they're upset, they probably come back the next day and say, okay, I thought about it. Let's try your method or whatever.
Yeah, and you're probably amazing at it because your heart is in the right place. I can tell. I can tell just now from the way you answered. You're not trying to show them, look at me, look how good I am, and you're not. And if you're not, you can't be at this level. You know, all that. You're like, look, I had the opportunity to learn from people that showed me and taught me, and wow, the aha moment hit. And I'm excited to share that with you because it'll make it way better and safer. And you'll see in the video, I give the 6 reasons why, actually.
So earlier today, Woody, as we mentioned earlier in this video, he mentioned his reasons of why you want to be in trim and, you know, have the proper buoyancy and all of that. But I want to hear your reasons, Hakeem. So I'm going to play devil's advocate, right?
That's great.
I enjoy diving in the open water. I'm not doing anything technical. I'm not going inside a cave or a wreck. And I like being vertical. Like, I want to feel like I'm walking around, like in New York City, underwater. What's the problem? There you go. Akeem, what will you answer?
The first thing is that it will make things harder for you. It starts with the breathing. There's just a difference between your breathing and where your breathing takes place and your lungs, basically. So being horizontal will make things more effortless for you.
So can we, as you're answering, can we put check marks when you hit each one of mine? Ding, 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 ding. There's number one we agree on. Okay, keep going.
The second thing, obviously, is moving in the water column. Yeah, I mean, walking around in New York City is one thing. Also, there might be bad air and pollution. It's not as dense as water. So moving through the water column is way easier if you're horizontal. I mean, even
number two.
That could go on with different fin techniques, etc. But that's a main issue. Number three is obviously you don't want to mess it up for other divers. So unless you're really in blue water, I mean, you will steer up silt. You might kill coral. Actually, we have a lake in Germany where there's a lot of diving where the plants die because there's so much sediment coming up from the divers and the dive schools that goes down on the plants, so the plants die off. So, so it doesn't even have to be coral to be damaged.
That's three. We agree on. Perfectly, without ever
buoyancy
meeting
control.
You.
Yep. Buoyancy control is a lot easier. Depending a little bit what you use and if everything else is all right, right? I mean, that's a point that could be argued about by other people, by the stubborn ones. But generally, if your layout of your equipment, everything is correct, you will be more stable in the water column, moving up and down, because like a skydiver, you have more resistance. You're laying on the water, so to speak, and the same thing going up. I mean, you're moving way faster if you go rocket style instead of moving up like this.
So that fourth one
did
is
we tick off all six boxes?
that fourth one is very similar to what I said, because if it is way easier, like you said, ultimately breathing less, so you're going to be way better on your air consumption. And number 5 was it's way safer. You see, if we are both in trim, you are an asset to me and I'm an asset to you, right? It's very effortless for you to help me and I help you if we're kind of as a buddy team in trim. It's very difficult actually to do the skills properly when you're out of trim. Frankly, I find it to be difficult to do them
and reach
like
each other.
And how about Gus's point? Just get to each other, man. Right? I mean, this, you said you're way more efficient. So, and then finally, I can't remember my sixth one, but I think it ultimately was, if you do all of these other things, it's going to bring you what you were looking for. Fun, because the marine life, and I want to do it.
Safety.
I didn't even want to go into the cave reasons, right? That's a whole nother ballgame. Just your basic open water divers, which is probably the majority of people who we're talking to. Guess what the marine life's going to do? You're breathing less, you're chilled, you're relaxed, they sense you're fun. Now you get to experience what you went down there for.
Yeah.
To just look at pretty fish. There's nothing wrong with looking at pretty fish.
And another thing is, I mean, a lot of skills and techniques are based on neutral buoyancy and proper trim. I mean, it starts with finning techniques. I mean, swim a proper frog kick or a minor frog being vertical doesn't really work. Working with lines, etc. I mean, there's a ton of things that you simply can't do if you're not properly positioned in the water.
So I guess our message is the same. It's really, though, Gus and I went further and we discussed that, look, we see locally here and in the open water, instructors that immediately the first thing they're doing is planning their students into a negative vertical position. Now, how in the world are we, instructor, how could you possibly, number one, what is your why? And don't tell me control, because we're going to start our students off in a 3-foot section of a pool. So you always have control. Just stand up.
That's 1 meter for you.
Instructors, that's actually what he's aiming for. It's easy. I mean, if you, so sorry for interrupting you, but that's one of my main points. An instructor creates a bad student, so it's one bad diver. That's a drama, but it's one bad diver. So now an instructor trainer creates bad instructors that then multiply by creating bad, and so on. I mean, you see where this is going. So if you have an instructor with poor training, and I see people like this locally, they have 120 dives and suddenly are instructors and are allowed to be responsible for people's life and health, and for 8 of them at a time. And they have no idea how to control it because they lack the experience. So the easiest thing for them is put them on the ground, make him super heavy. Nobody's shooting to the surface. Nobody's running away.
You are so
and
right.
That's where it all comes from,
and
in my opinion.
that was going to be my last question, for us to wrap up this interview, is we contemplated why are instructors not teaching people in trim? Like, I get it that the 3 of us do it, but why are other instructors not doing this? And I brought up that, in my opinion, the reason is because they don't know how to do it. They can do it themselves. They don't know how to be on trim and buoyancy, right? Perfect trim. So they can teach others how to do something they don't do themselves. What do you guys think?
Exactly.
Well, I think that it's not hard to become a scuba diving instructor. I think it's very, very easy.
Yep.
I think that, the whole self-certification process to become an advanced instructor, every agency calls it something different, is absurd. Like, what in the world does that mean? Because my ego now is going to say, I'm self-certified. I'm a dry suit instructor. Really? Yeah. Your specialty
I did 4 dives.
So we've got to, as an industry, I'm not saying make it militant, because I just got through saying it should be fun, but it can be fun while at the same time making sure that instructors, candidates are absolutely, as a priority, weighting people properly and in trim and buoyant, not as a secondary effect, but as maybe the single most important thing that we're going to evaluate you on in order to be an instructor, is that. I get it. You're in a pool and you can read your objective and your values and your key points off a written slate. If a human being can write and read, you can be an instructor and get a perfect score on your presentation. I mean, give me a break. I mean, a 5th grader can do this.
Yeah.
So can you, though, instill in the industry how important this is? I don't know.
But that is the challenge, and I think this is like a whole nother video we can make about this. I feel like we're in an industry where instructor evaluators are heavily incentivized to certify instructors, where instructor trainers are
Yeah.
heavily incentivized to create instructor, candidates. Everyone gets paid and gets rewarded on numbers. Like, can you make the most of them? So when you are rewarded based on that, when you have to certify 10 instructors so you can make it to that next IE level or whatever, then the standard's lower, right? There's no incentive to create these super competent instructors. Why? I don't get paid for that. I get paid to create instructors. So let's lower the standards and make them as quick as possible. That is the challenge.
Yeah.
We will get,
But that's the trend for the past 20, 30 or whatever
Yep.
years. I mean, I always tend to say, I mean, to become a diver, you need pulse and a credit card. That's all you need today. And for the instructor level, it's not much better. And when you look at the standards, I mean, it's not about the agency. I mean, you can look at all of them, but they lower the standards actually. And the equipment manufacturers support it by making all these crutches, which brings me back to the video. But the industry is making it worse and worse and worse by itself. Also, they all claim it becomes more safer and better. It's not. It's actually getting worse. And the reason you just said, it's about money.
Yeah.
it is about money. And well, we can't go into this. We don't have time, but
It's a whole nother show.
are recreational divers statistically now, because we're going to get these comments, is there data to support recreational divers are actually less safe now, even though they're not in good trim and neutrally buoyant, than they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, or 20 years ago? I like to leave cliffhangers out there, and
Yeah.
we like comments, because we can assume whatever we want and say all of these things. So if it's purely based on safety, people are going to throw statistics out on us. But we scuba dive to have fun. And my motivation is I want you to enjoy what I've loved for 45, 46 years more. Forget just purely the safety. I would like to share this and your and Gus's attitude on this so it's actually more fun. Period.
Yeah.
End of story of why we want to be diving like this. It's way more fun.
Yeah.
But fun comes with skill, knowledge, and safety, right?
Yep.
Yep. And I
And actually,
think
to what you just said with the statistics, what makes this statistics worse is the fact that people that get certified do less dives than they did 10 or 20 years before.
so
Which,
true.
I mean, first of all, there's that much more activity. So you dive one year, you play tennis next year, then whatever. And the other thing is that we feel that a lot of people that get classic training, so to speak, feel unsafe afterwards. So they do their certification, they do a couple of dives in their vacation, they maybe do another vacation, they feel they're not safe, they do not have fun,
Yes.
and then they get out of the sport.
Yeah.
Now
That
I
is so
want
true.
to hug you. See, now that is worthy of a pink-hatted.
Same haircut. both of you.
Seriously, right now, that last comment, everybody, you should back it up and listen to it like 10 times. Maybe that is the single smartest thing I've heard in years as why.
Hey.
No, I heard a couple of smart things from you, but that was a bullseye. Thank you.
Absolutely. There's so much great stuff on your channel, by the way. I've sent your tutorial about shooting an SMB, a delayed SMB, DSMB, like I don't know how many times. I mean, half the views on that video are from my recommendations, by the way. I'm just going to claim that. But there's a ton of stuff. So can you do just a quick plug about your channel and why people should be watching? By the way, like I said, we're big fans.
Yeah, you're
Go and
awesome.
subscribe. Awesome stuff.
Thank you very much. Let me just about the hug. I'll be in Florida next year, and I would
Oh.
love to go diving with you guys.
Yes.
Oh, dude, okay.
100%.
Are you kidding me?
100%.
What now? Is that cave diving or ocean diving or frankly
Yes.
both?
Whatever.
Yes.
Whatever. I used to live in Florida for 7 years on Key Tavernier, so it's time to go back. I haven't been there for a long time.
Can't wait.
do it.
Can't wait.
Yeah, my channel. That was created initially to give skill videos to the ISE instructors. When they teach, they have something to refer to, and then it kind of took off and became a thing of its own. And So first of all, I really love to do this. And nowadays, it's all the video topics, it's things that people ask me. So, I mean, the community grows bigger, yeah, people send me questions and messages and can you do this and can you do that? And then obviously, yeah, there's a list of topics that I'm going through, and just the fact that there's so many divers out there that are obviously trained and certified and they have these questions makes me scratch my head. And if I can help a little bit clarifying things or showing somebody a skill that probably makes them safer on the next dive, then yeah, it was worth it.
How many times do you get the question, when are you going to be on Dive Talk?
Maybe that was the first time right there.
The first time. Well,
no, and actually quite a couple of times. I saw a few comments.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're happy to have you.
Yes.
Obviously, always welcome. And we look forward to diving with you in Florida,
Yes.
Obviously, next year as well. Hopefully, you bring your rebreather. What rebreather do you dive, by the way?
KISS Classic.
Oh, dude.
Come on.
You're in the KISS family?
Of course.
This is ridiculous.
What?
Yeah,
If we don't dive together...
I'm a KISS instructor trainer.
What?
I'm a KISS dealer.
So you know like Patrick Widman and Mike Young and Ed Sorensen and Doug Ebersol and all of our good friends.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we don't dive next year, that's now a problem. It's a problem for me.
Absolutely.
No, it's promised.
Good.
Absolutely. And we do have a few spots in Florida, even though you live there, that perhaps you haven't seen that we would love to take you to.
Yes.
And I'm going to leave a video right here so people can watch one of those spots. But thank you so much for agreeing to being on the show and for discussing this important topic. There's so much stuff to talk about, though, so we should plan to do another one of these later on and pick another subject and get after it.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you guys very much for the invitation. And yeah, whenever you have something, I'm happy to join you.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.